Hi there, I'm Renos Vakis, lead economist at the World Bank, and your host for Accelerating Development Ideas for Impact. This is not your typical podcast. It's an AI powered conversation brought to you by the World Bank Institute for Economic Development, where we unpack the latest research with one goal in mind turning big ideas into real world impact. Let's get started.
Thank you for the introduction, Renos. It's really great to be here today to discuss such a vital topic.
It's a global issue that touches so many lives, right? What are the biggest drivers of migration right now, in your expert opinion?
When you look at it, migration is becoming an important economic issue for countries at all income levels. And that's because it's being spurred by two big forces: rapid demographic transitions and, well, climate change.
Demographics. I guess that makes sense. We hear a lot about aging populations. Is that what you're referring to?
Absolutely. It's a huge factor. High income countries, they are aging very, very rapidly. For instance, in 2022, 19% of their population was over 65, and that's projected to hit 29% by 2050.
Wow, that's a significant jump. So you're saying that the working age population is like shrinking relative to the elderly.
Exactly. In high income OECD countries, the ratio of working age adults to elderly will drop from 2.9 in 2022 to below 2.0 by 2050. And it's not just the high income nations. Many upper middle income countries like Italy are also aging quickly, with Italy's population projected to shrink by almost half to 32 million by 2100.
And I imagine that creates a labor shortage, doesn't it?
It certainly does. These trends are, well, they're sparking a global competition for workers. Take the US, for example. They expect 11.9 million new jobs between 2020 and 2030, but their labor force will only grow by 8.9 million. Germany, needs an annual infusion of 400,000 foreign workers.
So, if I'm understanding this, on the other side of the coin, low income countries have like booming youth populations, creating a mismatch.
Precisely. Low income countries, especially in sub Saharan Africa, they have these booming youth populations. Nigeria, for one, is expected to grow from 213 million to 791 million by 2100. It's a massive, massive divergence.
And then you also mentioned climate change. How does that factor into this whole picture?
Climate change, it compounds other drivers of mobility. About 40% of the world's population, that's 3.5 billion people, live in places highly exposed to climate impacts like water shortages, drought, heat stresses, sea level rise, and extreme weather events.
So, it's threatening people's homes and livelihoods, essentially forcing them to move.
That's it. These impact, they threaten habitability and income productivity, and they really fuel migration pressures. Sudden onset extreme weather events displaced over 300 million people internally in the last 15 years alone.
And what about sea levels? I I imagine that's a big concern for like island nations.
Indeed, sea levels are projected to rise significantly, 0.15 to 0.40 meters by 2015, worst case scenarios for small island developing states, potentially submerging low lying atolls. And in parts of South Asia, tropical sub Saharan Africa, and Latin America, climate change is expected to reduce people's ability to work outdoors.
It sounds like if we don't manage these issues urgently, we could see a lot more distressed cross-border movements.
Exactly. And that's why effective migration management really requires a tailored approach. It needs to be based on what the World Bank calls the match and motive matrix, ensuring benefits are maximized for migrants, origin and destination countries while humanely addressing challenges.
Okay, so tell me more about this match and motive matrix. What is it exactly?
The match and motive matrix, it categorizes migration based on two key factors: how well migrant skills and attributes match the destination country's needs and their motive for movement.
So, um, if there's a strong match, that means benefits generally exceed costs for everyone involved.
That's right. For strong match scenarios, whether they're economic migrants or refugees with skills in demand, the benefits typically exceed costs for migrants, origin, and destination countries. Migrants often see significant income increases. For example, low skilled migrants' incomes surged by 210% in the Bangladesh Malaysia corridor and 298% in the India UAE corridor.
And what about legal status? Does that make a difference?
Oh, it makes a huge difference. Legal status significantly enhances these benefits. Regularization for Venezuelan nationals in Colombia, for instance, led to a 35% income increase and a 10% increase in formal employment. And destination countries, they gain from labor contributions. Foreign born individuals, accounted for 27% of doctors and 16% of nurses in 18 OECD countries in 2018.
So it's not just about um, filling jobs, but also like fiscal contributions.
Precisely. Fiscal contributions of migrants in OECD countries are, well, often higher than those of native born citizens. And origin countries, they benefit immensely from remittances, which reached an estimated 605 billion US dollars in 2021 for low and middle income countries. This really contributes to poverty reduction.
Like, um, how much of a contribution?
In Nepal, for example, there was a 40% decline in poverty rates in villages with higher emigration between 2001 and 2011. And it's not just money, knowledge transfers also accrue to origin countries. Think of Indian migrants in Silicon Valley who really spurred India's information technology sector.
Now, uh, what about the weak match fear motive category? Like refugees. How is that different?
This is where the international legal obligation comes in. When there's a weak match and a fear motive, the costs need to be shared and reduced multilaterally because destination countries have an international legal obligation to host these populations. The number of refugees worldwide was 37.8 million as of mid 2022, having more than doubled in the last decade.
And where are most of these refugees hosted?
A significant share, 52%, are hosted in middle income countries, typically bordering their origin countries. And these situations are protracted. Refugees spend an average of 13 years in exile. Host country policies, therefore, need to adopt a medium term development perspective, focusing on internal mobility, self reliance, which is access to jobs, and inclusion in national services.
So, allowing them to move around within the host country can actually help.
Yes, absolutely. For instance, allowing refugees internal mobility in Turkey really reduced impacts on first arrival communities.
And finally, what about the weak match, no fear motive group? Um, Distressed migrants? That sounds like a really difficult challenge.
It is a difficult policy challenge because these movements are often irregular and unsafe. Since 2014, nearly 50,000 migrants have sadly died or gone missing while in transit. These individuals may not qualify as refugees, but they often will still have protection needs. The policy goal is to humanely reduce the need for such distressed movements.
And what are the policy actions being taken or needed for this group?
Policy actions include strengthening people's resilience in origin countries, extending complementary protection, and, and shifting incentives through legal pathways. Transit countries, which often bear significant burdens, they really require bilateral cooperation with destination countries to manage these movements effectively.
So, it sounds like international cooperation is like central to all of this. What does that look like in practice?
International cooperation is, well, it's essential for effective migration governance. On the bilateral front, it's critical for strengthening the match of migrant skills with destination needs. Canada's Seasonal Agricultural Workers Program, for example, brings in 20,000 workers annually from Mexico and Caribbean countries. And global skills building programs, they finance skill building programs in origin countries.
And for multilateral efforts?
Multilateral cooperation is essential for addressing fear-driven movements and sharing costs for hosting refugees. The International Development Association's window for host communities and refugees, it has provided 6 billion US dollars in resources to 17 low-income refugee hosting countries. And the Global Concessional Financing Facility, it's approved 725 million US dollars in grants. Regional initiatives like the Quito process among Latin American countries, they help coordinate responses to Venezuelan migration.
Beyond international cooperation, what about domestic policy reforms? What should origin and destination countries be focusing on?
Origin countries, they should integrate labor emigration into their development strategies. This means lowering remittance costs, as Mexico did with its financial technology law, leveraging knowledge transfers, like Vietnam engaging its diaspora, and expanding education and training for globally demanded skills, as seen with the Philippines' expanded nursing programs. They also need to protect nationals abroad, like Indonesia's 2017 law reform.
And what about destination countries?
Destination countries, they must identify labor needs and ensure policy coherence. They should incentivize strong match immigration with formal status and rights, as we've seen with Korea's employment permit system and the United Arab Emirates' labor legislation reforms, which allow workers to change employers. Policies should also facilitate economic and social inclusion, like Germany's foreign qualification recognition, and support nationals negatively affected by migration.
It sounds like a lot to manage.
It really is. And for transit countries, cooperation is needed to absorb distressed migrants or return them humanely, including efforts to combat smuggling and exploitative employers.
And finally, you mentioned new voices and data. Why are those like important?
Migration reform is a political process that requires, well, new stakeholder groups to be heard. This includes voices from developing countries, the private sector, labor unions, local authorities, and critically, migrants and refugees themselves. And I just think that's key. Reliable, timely, and comprehensive data are absolutely critical for evidence-based policy making. We have challenges like inconsistent definitions and limited data accessibility. So efforts are needed to harmonize data collection methodologies, invest in new types of surveys, and promote open data while ensuring privacy. That way, policymakers can really make informed decisions.
Fascinating insights. It's clear this is a multifaceted challenge requiring a comprehensive approach.
Indeed, it is. Over to you, Renos.
Thank you for joining us. You can find the full report on our website. Just follow the link in the description. Be sure to subscribe to be the first to know about upcoming episodes. And before you go, how do you plan to put what you learn into practice? And what topics you'd like us to explore next? We'd love to know. Until then, goodbye.